My name is Damon Brown. You're watching Bring Your Worth TV. Thank you for coming through. I'm entrepreneur and coach Damon Brown. I help side hustlers, solopreneurs, otherwise non-traditional entrepreneurs. I help you get yourself together, build your communities, build passive income, and essentially show up in a certain way where you can contribute to the world in a higher level without destroying yourself in the process and while keeping your priorities in order. You can learn more about me at damonbrown.net. And you're watching Bring Your Worth TV. I come to you every Wednesday, usually live at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You can subscribe to the channel for free. The main channel is at bringyourworth.tv, but you can catch me on the other platforms. You might be watching me on there now, whether you're over on Amazon, shout out to y'all, or over on LinkedIn, or even some of the platforms I'm not even officially on. You might be catching me there. You also might be listening, but hopefully you're watching and tuning in. If you want to get notifications as far as when new episodes happen, we're approaching 400 episodes. 400th episode is going to be probably within the next month, which is insane to me. It's been such a wonderful journey with y'all. Be sure and don't miss the good stuff. And if you subscribe, you not only will get the good stuff, but also you'll be able to see some of the older stuff over the past 4 or so years. You get my book, The Complete Bring Your Worth Collection. It's available everywhere now, including at damebrown.net and other platforms. Audiobook is also available. Actually recorded it myself, so if you like my voice, you'll be able to hear me talk to you for about 8 hours, which is crazy. A lot of work went into the audiobook. Thanks for everybody that supported it and has been supporting the complete collection. It includes the Ultimate Bites as Entrepreneur, which y'all made a bestseller, as well as Bring Your Worth, which is what everything here is named after, including the publishing company, and my personal favorite, Build From Now, How to Know Your Power, See Your Abundance, and Nourish the World. All that's inside here. Sunday, 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 as I used to say when I was growing up. If you're around my age, you know what I'm trying to say. It is a sale. Come through, support the book. If you're traveling overseas, I know some of y'all that I coach as a business coach are abroad. You're not able to get access to audiobooks. Sometimes there's some countries where you can't get audiobooks. If you see the link below that I'm pointing to right there, the whole audiobook is actually available for free to listen to you, for you to listen to. So I can listen to you, for you to listen to right now. All 8 hours or so of it is available right now at bringyourworth.tv. That's something I want to give to y'all. And also, a lot of y'all have supported me, but you might not have the resources or actually literally be able to access audiobooks where you happen to be. So have at it and share it with folks that you think might need to have some knowledge as far as getting help with their side hustling, with their solopreneuring, or otherwise being a non-traditional entrepreneur. Breaking news, you can catch my interview with Carlos Rodella. Appreciate you. He had me on his new podcast, Spoonful of AI, sponsored and organized by Spoon, which specializes in talking about food technology and Spoon. And they talk about technology and AI with me. I'm interviewed by Carlos. We've known each other for a long time, as you can probably tell once you listen to the half an hour interview. And I talk about how AI has impacted my work. My background is journalism. I have 2 degrees in journalism, so I understand and respect the evolution of media and us being content creators. That new term that I'm still getting used to, so I'm not quite comfortable with it, but I guess we're all kind of all in the same boat. So how AI has affected journalism, particularly authorship. How I took the Ultimate Bites as Entrepreneur, which is included in this book, and refreshed it using AI and then made it available to a lot of y'all that are watching right now among the 18,000 plus subscribers and made the book fresh for y'all. It was already a bestseller going on 10 years ago. And then about a year ago, I actually reproduced it using AI and it's able to add images to it. All that's available again at bringyourworth.tv. You'll see it right on the front page under official audiobooks or under official Damon Brown books. I talk about the process behind that, some of the behind the scenes, and how writers, particularly professional writers like myself, authors, journalists, those kind of folks, should look at AI and take it seriously and look at it more like a partnership versus looking at it as a replacement. Because it's not going to replace anything except for being a partner in the things that we might be able to have it help us do. So it's a great conversation. At least I had a good time. I think Carlos had a good time as well. He asked some really good questions. And again, he and I go way back to living in the same area in Silicon Valley way back in the day. So we had some fun and some banter with it as well. In case you missed it last week, during my birthday celebration, we actually talked about my favorite banned books. I love banned books. And if you missed the episode, I talk about my own book that has been banned twice. It's actually hard to get, so you should get it while you can. And I'm actually behind the scenes doing some conversations about getting new versions of the book out. That's the best hint I can give. Check it out. My favorite banned books live Q&A episode 394. Thank you to all of y'all that came through. It was a blast. Pardon me. Promise it's just tonic water. All right. Today's show, NGMI, which is short, as the kids say, for not going to make it. If you see NGMI, that's what it means. When and how to take that loss. This is what we're talking about today, folks. Um, you're going to have L's on your jacket, as they say. Not everything's going to be a W. That's just kind of how it works. And as many great artists have said, and many great people have said, if you haven't taken any losses, then you're playing it too safe. There could be a loss in your personal life. It could be a loss professionally. It could be a loss in like a friendship. Those things happen. That's part of the game. Uh, as the Shakespeare saying goes, right? It's better to have loved than have lost than to have never loved at all. Of course, like 20 other Shakespeare Shakespeare themes and quotes are coming in my brain from freshman year, but I'm not going to try to recite them. But that's probably the one that captures the energy the most. If you're going to make an impact on the world, you don't have to make an impact on the world. Let's be clear. But if you're here, you probably want to. And definitely, if you've coached with me or you've been watching the show, you know the vibes. If you're going to make an impact on the world, you're going to take some losses. That's why the analogy is you can lose a battle but win the war, or vice versa. There's ways where sometimes a setback will set you up for success later. Sometimes letting go of a particular thing allows you to go forward. To paraphrase Whitney Johnson, who had a great podcast called Disrupt Yourself. Now she's spinning up a new podcast, but she has a really good book about disrupting yourself. She talked about having a slingshot effect. I had a similar argument in my book, The Bites as Entrepreneur, where sometimes you end up being held back in a certain way. But then once you're out of that particular situation, then you go even further, like a slingshot, you know, getting that momentum and getting that energy because the energy doesn't go away. So if you have a particular loss or a particular challenge, that desire to win or that desire for that thing or that situation that you wanted to stay in or that you wanted to happen, that desire might not go away, but it might be redirected into something that's more appropriate. So today we're going to talk about four different factors that might give you a good signal that it's time to let something go. And then, as well as tools, particularly books and some other Bring Your Worth episodes that will help you bow out gracefully and then reconfigure it so that you can actually come stronger again. I talked about this in my free newsletter. It's at joindamon.me. Comes out every Wednesday at I almost said 111, 5:55 a.m. It comes out every Wednesday at 5:55 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. So usually the same day that I have the live show at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I also have the newsletter comes out every Wednesday at 5:55 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I have a topic for every newsletter, and it's usually kind of a deep dive essay talking about something that's common within the people that I coach, or even within my particular life, since I'm also a side hustler, a solopreneur, and a non-traditional entrepreneur. And today we talked about when to stop. And if you want more context about this and how I deal with this personally and so forth, be sure and check it out. You can join for free. The newsletter goes pretty deep now. I've had the newsletter for officially for probably about a decade, unofficially for much longer. But the archive currently, if you click on shout to Beehive, my host for the newsletter, I love working with y'all. If you click on the Beehive link right there, then you'll get an archive. I think all the way to the beginning of this year. And as I'm recording this, this is October of 2024. And so you kind of do the math where I do a newsletter every week, goes all the way back up to, again, I believe the new year, New Year's Eve or so. So yeah, plenty of archive stuff there. It's a good reminder as I'm talking to y'all. I would like to go ahead and in the near future take my newsletters from the previous platforms and start to archive them. So it's a great time to go ahead and subscribe to the newsletter. Again, it's free to y'all, a free service, and you also can learn about some other stuff that's happening as well as coaching opportunities, speaking engagements, just new stuff that's happening with me, and new ways that I can serve y'all. And hopefully that'll be part of the conversation with y'all. All right. So as we get into it, the first thing that we need to recognize where you're like, well, I don't know if I should let this go. One of the first signals that you should let something go and realize that it's not going to work out how it is, NGMI, as people say today, is that it's taking more energy than it's actually giving. There's a strong caveat to this. If we're going to make an impact on the world, if we're going to have a positive relationship with a potential spouse, someone we're dating, or someone that's a life partner, if we're going to have a good relationship with a family member, chosen family or otherwise, a good friend or whatever, if we're going to do good work in the world, as far as in a broader sense, that's going to require energy. Right now, it's cloudy and or it's a little bit cloudy in Vegas. I have a little bit of an allergy thing going on, but I'm committed to showing up for you guys. So even though I'm tired right now, you might be able to see it in my eyes, but I might be tired right now, but I'm still showing up for y'all. Whatever you're going to do is going to require energy. The key thing here is that once you put the energy out there, it's going to have to come back. If you're putting your energy into things where either it's not coming back at all or the time it takes to get that energy back is way too long, we're talking like several solar years, then it might not be worth it. It might be worth letting it go. I think one of the challenging things that I've dealt with, and perhaps you've been in that situation too, is you put your time, your energy, all the resources. I talk about that in my book, Build From Now. You talk about you put your time, your focus, your agility, your time, and your energy, the things I talk about and Build From Now, into a particular thing, and then you're pushing it, and you're like, I'm expecting to get that energy back. The energy could be love, it could be money, it could be additional resources, it could be gratitude. Talk about the five different languages. It could be gratitude to say, "Hey, thank you for working so hard on that." And so you're expecting that to come back. That's okay. It's okay to have those expectations. Those might actually be your needs, right? We all have needs in that. Things get complicated though, and I've been in a situation a handful of times where have you ever like realized you're hitting your limit? Whether it's putting your financial resources in something or the amount of time and emotional labor is what I'm really getting at. You put into something and you're like, you know what? This is wearing me out or this feeling stressful. I can feel it in my body, which we'll get into in a second. Yeah, I can feel it in my body. It's wearing me out and so forth. But you know what? If I just push a little bit further, then maybe it'll pay off. Now, we all have our crunch time. I've done 2 startups. I sold the second one. You can learn about it in my books or earlier in the channel, early in the earlier episodes of the channel. Again, you go to bringyourworth.tv. You hear me talk about my different sagas with startup worlds. And you're going to have what in Silicon Valley and in the tech world they call crunch times. You're going to have crunch times where you're going to push yourself really hard. Like there's different projects I'm working on right now, and there's certain timings with them. And I'm like, you know what? I'm really tired right now. Excuse me. Like I said, I have allergies right now. So I'm really tired, but let me push a little bit further. I cannot wait to show them to you, by the way. They're they're in the last lap. I cannot wait to get them to you. But that's like a crunch time. It's like there's a deadline for this. I need to get it out at a certain time. Y'all might be expecting it, or a certain group might be expecting it. That's fine. But then when that becomes a default, that's when we get into trouble. And there's a moment when we've done enough, and then there's a moment when we've done more than enough. There's a moment when we've done enough, and then there's a moment when we've done more than enough, where we've taken it further. More than enough is okay some of the time. But if you're going to go to more than enough, there's two things that need to happen. The first thing that needs to happen is that you need to recognize that you're going over your limit. Sometimes we don't do that check in physically, mentally, emotionally, that we're going over our limit, right? So we'll go ahead and say, oh, well, I'll just push a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further, and then not recognize that we're way over the way over the line. To paraphrase Charlie Murphy, we're being habitual line steppers. There's a line right here, and then we're gonna keep going. Rest in peace to Charlie Murphy. We're just gonna keep going. If we stay in that status, we're always going to be overtaxed. We're going to be overregulated, as they say in the psychological world. We're going to be overregulated. We're going to be doing too much. You're doing too much. When people say you're doing too much, that's what they mean. You're way out of bounds, and you're doing so much that you're actually intruding on, frankly, the opportunity for other people to do things. And then you're also, of course, stressing yourself out, which is where we get burnout and other types of things that we don't, right? Other related trauma, frankly, that we're dealing with. The second element of that is that we don't recognize when we're going too far, but we also don't always see that whatever more we're putting in, at a certain point, we're not going to get it back. It's almost like a half life. If you think about science, or I keep on thinking about orbits, the time it takes for, let's say, the planet Uranus to do a full orbit, it's like 278 years or something. I'm still into astronomy. So it's like 278, let's say 300 years for the planet Uranus to go all the way around in orbit. There's no way in our lifetime we're going to see the whole orbit. So it's almost like us putting energy into something, resources into something, where there's no way in hell it's going to come back ever, at least not within our lifetime. Now, if that's part of our plan to say we're going to work and build something beyond a lifetime, that's fine. But us stressing ourselves out and overtaxing ourselves with the assumption that, number one, not recognizing we're pushing ourselves too hard, and number two, that whatever we're doing, we're basically pouring into an empty vessel because we're never going to get the energy back, is a dangerous combination. That's a sick, that alone, when you are not going to get the energy back, once you admit that to yourself, you got to let it go. That's, it's kind of required, because our job here isn't to burn ourselves out or to get ourselves in a place where we're overtaxed and overregulating. Again, my favorite psychological word right now, overregulating, and we're doing stuff that's way out of bounds. That's not our job. If we're in a relationship and the other person isn't contributing, I don't mean not contributing as much, because relationships are kind of give and take. But they're not contributing at all and you're not going to get the energy back, it doesn't, that's a lost cause, respectfully. If you're in a co-founder situation and your co-founders are pulling their weight and you're burning yourself out, the scales have to balance. That they have to. If you're pursuing something and there's no kind of energy that you're going to get back from it, that's a tough conversation you're going to have with yourself. And for better or for worse, no one else is going to pull you aside to do that, because only you know what your limitations are. You might have certain limitations that are like financial, where you literally can look at a bank statement and be like, oh crap, I'm going broke. And you might be able to share that with someone, and then or a team or whatever, you can make an adjustment for it. But those more ethereal, abstract, invisible resources, I call them, only you would know that. Only you would know if you're about to burn out. No one else can do that. You can have mentors, you can have spouses, you have people that care about you, people that love you, but only you would know what those boundaries are. So, we're really talking about boundary setting. Shout out to Brene Brown. Boundaries. That's what we're really talking about. If you're in a situation where you're putting all your energy into something, you got to do the calculus and say, am I ever going to get this energy back? Am I ever going to recoup? And I don't mean just financially, because you not allowing yourself to be whole again because you're investing into something that's not going to get you your energy back. That's Again, that's not what we're here for. That's not your job. The best book that I've read recently, oh man, I love this book that talks about it. This book, The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. I've never said his name out loud, even though I read this book. You see all the, see, I'm starting to lose my voice again. You see all the dog ears. There's actually some bedtime reading for my kids, even though it's some intense stuff in there. But there's some great passages in there as far as emotional intelligence. This book is a bestseller for a reason. You've probably heard people say this over the past decade, particularly if you've been in the same circles I have, where they say the body keeps score. Number one, the title is officially "The Body Keeps the Score." So I'm going to be real about it. I'm a fellow author. I want to respect Dr. Dirtico's, process. What it basically means is that whatever we're dealing with, and he talks a lot about trauma, but whatever we're dealing with, the body doesn't forget it. So if you go through something that's really intense, that's still being held. Now, it could be held on an emotional level, on a mental level, and on a physical level, right? On a mental level, you might have forgot about it. In fact, you might have pushed it away, and at least as far as you're consciously aware of, which he gets into. But you're like, oh yeah, that breakup, or when that company didn't work out, or when I got fired from that job, I'm over that. Whatever, whatever. Mentally, you might be going that, doing those gymnastics. Emotionally, somebody brings it up, you might feel a little way about it. And you'd be like, wow, you still have some feelings about it. You might be like, nah, nah, I'm alright, I'm good. The body, though, the body keeps the score. Excuse me. And so when you have, it's almost like having a somatic, which means physical or body. It's almost like having a somatic, somatic memory. Like you might remember something that happened to you when you were in fourth grade. You remember it in your mind, fine. You might not remember. You might remember how you felt with whatever happened in fourth grade. But it's saying the body keeps the score. And if that stuff isn't processed, whether it's going to therapy, talking it through, sitting with yourself, forgiving yourself or forgiving someone else or a situation because of the circumstances, um, letting go of some of the guilt or the shame related to those circumstances, whatever it happens to be, then your body will find a way to hold on to it and process it. And it could come up with some nasty stuff. And so he's a doctor for a very long time and did a bunch of studies that are related to how the body keeps the score and holds on to those particular things. Not only does the body represent those things that we might be repressing or those things that we want to forget about and we haven't dealt with, but it also gives signals as far as us being in situations that are my favorite word of the year, untenable. Untenable means that it cannot go on, it can't hold. It's too unstable. Not going to happen. And GMI, not going to make it. The sooner we recognize that, the healthier, frankly, we can be. And so we've been in those situations. I'm sure you have, particularly if you're a grown adult like I am. At least I am most of the time, where you have a particular situation that you're in, and suddenly you catch a cold, and you're like, I can't shake this cold. It's like, well, there might be a stressful conversation that you need to have that you haven't had yet. You're in a particular job situation that you know is not right up for you on some level. You're putting in more energy than you're getting. It's untenable. And now you're like, your body's basically saying, keeping the score. So it's not just a score of stuff that you might be repressing or not want to deal with. And then it's coming back in some something that's happening with your body reminding you to deal with it on these other emotional and mental levels. It also could represent a signal of you being in a situation that on some level you're putting too much energy into, and your body's making it direct and saying, hey, I'm going to go ahead and make you trip on this stair. I'm going to go ahead and give you allergies or whatever, even though it's more weather related. But I'm going to go and give you allergies just to pause you so you can think about what the hell you're doing and maybe make some other decisions. And then the rest of the body, your mind and your heart, your emotions will thank me for it. Excuse me. The book is filled with stuff like that. I cannot recommend the book more. We're almost at the end of the year. This book came out like 10, 15 years ago. This might be my book of the year. I love, love, love this book. This book, along with Trisha Hersey's Rest is Resistance, kind of see a theme here. They're both fantastic books. Cannot recommend them more. Maybe by the end of the year, I'll do my favorite books of the year. But this is one of them. Top five. Woo! This is so good, so good. Highly recommended. And the doctor's still around. In fact, I have some colleagues that are trying to meet with him to he does like conferences and speaking engagement stuff. So they're trying to go to one of his events. Man, I envy that. Bless them. I hope they have a wonderful time there. But the doctor does not play. He doesn't mince words, and it's so wonderful, wonderfully written and analytical as well as very humane. Can't recommend the book more. My live show from a couple weeks ago, almost said a couple years ago. My live show from a couple weeks ago. I swear it wasn't a couple years ago. Excuse me. Five secrets to making change in transition. Live Q&A, episode 393. The link is right below. Or if you're watching one other platforms, just come to bringyourworth.tv, and the link is right there while you're watching this episode on another platform. One of my favorite live episodes probably I've ever done, and I talk about the 5 ways, 5 steps to going through a tough change and having a better transition. Briefly, change is what happens on the environment, what happens on the outside. Transition is how you handle that change on the inside. So, transition is more about emotions and adjustment and things like that. Change is the circumstances, whether they're initiated by you or not. As Liz Gilbert talked about in her brilliant TED Talk. She's done 2 TED Talks. She has one TED Talk about change. And it doesn't matter whether it's a good change or a bad change, quote unquote, or if you initiated it or if you did initiate it, doesn't matter. We're still going through the same change, and our bodies react in that same way to as far as to change. So we might as well get used to transitioning in a healthy way, whether it's going broke or winning lottery. God, it doesn't matter. All the body knows, it's back to the body. All the body knows is that things are different and it needs to adjust. Excuse me. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown. You can learn more about me at damonbrown.net. I'm here to help you as a side hustler, solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. You're watching Bring Your Worth.tv, episode 395, approaching 400 episodes. You can catch me live on Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time, as well as the archive of episodes, all organized at Bring Your Worth.tv. We got playlists, all that stuff. Whatever you're into, I got you. Especially after 400 episodes, chances are I covered some of the stuff that will help you as a side hustler, a solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. You can subscribe for free at that messy link below. I look forward to these links being a lot shorter. That'll be on my excuse me, that'll be on my media wish list, but I have no control over that one. And you get the complete Bring Your Worth collection right now, wherever books and audiobooks are sold. You can listen to the audiobook right now at bringyourworth.tv. All right, so the first element of that, excuse me, is is if it's time to quit something, it's taking more energy than it gives. It's taking more energy than it gives. A good signal that it's time to let something go is if you're procrastinating doing the thing. You're procrastinating doing the thing. Now, I want to immediately caveat this, where that doesn't mean that you're tired or you're moving slow and it takes you longer than expected. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about ADHD or other types of neurospicy approaches where you just have a hard time completing things. Not talking about that either. I have a lot of loved ones that deal with that. I get it. What I'm talking about is that you just don't want to do it to the point where it's just out there. It's amazing. And I'm a parent, so I have an 8-year-old and 11-year-old. and a very active one at that, stay-at-home dad and all that. And it's amazing where there'll be something that my boys, they're both boys, my boys want to do, and they'll just spin it up. They'll come up with every single reason why it can happen. And if it's something they do not want to do, you can imagine it's quite the opposite. We never really change. We don't really outgrow that. I'm talking about kids, but we never really outgrow that. So if there's something that's on your agenda, there's a company that you're building, there's a person that you want to be with, there's a situation that you want to make real, and you're just not putting the energy into it at all, that usually signals that it might not mean anything to you now, or maybe it did at one period of time, but it just doesn't make any sense. And as I've talked about in previous episodes, it's actually okay for us to outgrow our goals. If you think about it, like, I'm middle aged right now. Imagine if I had the same goals that I had when I was like a teenager. Like that would, you know, I'll be getting clowned right now because we're at a different place. I'm at a different place. I'm sure you are too, compared to where you were 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, what have you. So it's okay to outgrow those things. What's not okay is to be in those situations where you're not contributing or don't want to contribute to this particular goal, but you keep saying that you're committed to it. Great example. I believe it was Don Cheadle. I recently seen Don Cheadle. I wish it was in person, but it was on TV. He was actually on the Team Coco podcast. It's a podcast by Conan O'Brien, the late night talk show host, and now, of course, he's retired from that and has a podcast. Great podcast, by the way. You can catch it on any of the platforms, YouTube, or of course, you can listen to it on your favorite audiobook platform or audiobook um, podcast platform, audiobook. And Don Cheadle talked about actually studying jazz, and he was studying jazz, and he would play Miles Davis later on in his life, but studying jazz as well as I think he was studying acting at the same time. Of course, he's a well-known actor in America at this point. And he was telling the story about it wasn't Juilliard, but it was a high level music school, and how everyone around him was obsessed with their instrument, obsessed with the flute, obsessed with the oboe, obsessed with whatever. And whatever he was playing, it was a woodwind. So, if he played Miles Davis later, let's say it was the horn, and it might have been the flugelhorn. And he's like, I really like the flugelhorn. I'm pretty good at it, but if this is gonna be my profession, like I need to be told to practice. I need to be told. Like I think it might have been his parents or whomever. Like my parents are on me to practice. But then you got kids who, if you ever seen the movie More Better Blues, the Spike Lee movie starring Denzel Washington, and they talk about a horn player all about jazz, and like if I remember correctly, he would sleep with his horn, the character. Like this is the complete Bring Your Worth collection. This is my 27th book. I'm not that old. Again, I just had a birthday. I'm middle aged, but 27 books. I think that might be more than the years I've been an adult. Books are an obsession. And since I was younger than my kids, no one had to tell me to go and write, ever. Even when I went to grad school, I have a master's in magazine publishing, and I was studying journalism, and well, like nonstop schooling again, straight through grad school. So I was one of those guys. No one had to tell me, Damon, go write, ever. They might have given me some guidance or said, hey, you might need to write this way or that way, or use this particular technique, particularly with journalism. So there is a format, but no one had to tell me to do it. That's what Don Cheadle was getting at. He was like, "Oh, this ain't for me," because no one had to tell him to go act, but they had to tell him to go play the horn or whatever he was playing. No one has to tell me to go write a book. No one has to tell me to hang out with y'all or to be on the TED stage. Definitely no one has to tell me to be a business coach. I've coached hundreds of y'all, several hundreds probably at this point. No one has to tell me to do that. If it's something that's you're actually getting energy from, something that you feel like is part of your greater purpose, something that you feel like you're contributing to the world, then people shouldn't have to say, you have to do this. You shouldn't have to yell at yourself to do it. Now, there's a certain grind aspect to getting to this point. I didn't just appear on the second stage of TED, a handful of years ago when I did my first TED talk or TED style talk. I had to work towards that, but that work made sense because that's what I really wanted. I did want to do public speaking. All the grinding for I don't know how many years I was in school until I got my grad degree. I saw the vision all along that I was going to be a professional writer. Didn't know what kind, but I knew I was going to be a professional writer. So that momentum was naturally there. Now, again, the neurospicy of us and other things, sometimes things get in the way. But even for my loved ones or people that I coach that are dealing with certain neurospiciness, such as ADHD or folks that are bipolar and things like that, when it comes to that shit they care about, they don't mess around at all. And so if you're in that situation where you're like, I'm passionate about this, and then for some reason you're not doing it, that's a signal. You're procrastinating doing the thing. And the thing is, so many things today. The thing is that it's not like that thing is going to get lighter. It's not like that thing is going to get less intense. I get a nice little bag when I go fly to an event and I do public speaking. If I hated public speaking back when I was doing this joint for free years ago, me getting 4, 5 figures wired to my account is not going to make me love the thing. Sorry, money's not going to do it. So if I was procrastinating, I would probably even feel even worse because then I would feel shame, guilt, and silly because I have a family and I'm turning away this money because some reason I can't get on the stage. It's better if you're feeling that way to deal with it early. Vibe into something that you actually care about. It's okay to let it go. It's better to vibe with something you actually care about and then show up regularly, consistently, and not have to push yourself in that kind of weird way than to fool yourself into being into something that you're not into anymore. Because eventually, again, the body keeps the score, and eventually all that stuff's going to come out. And that might be blocking you from your true success. See, now you got me on my coaching bag. If you want to coach with me, davidbrown.net. Maybe I can help you level up as well. But I'll stop getting in my coaching bag for right now. A great book that talks about this, The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday and Stephen Hanselman. I hope you both are well. Fantastic book. I have like 5 versions of this book, and I had to get a hardcover copy. I read it around the time that I was doing my first startup called So Quotable, when my co-parenting partner and I had our first kid. He just turned 11 this summer, so it was a while ago. I remember having an audiobook, and at the same time that just became a startup guy and bootstrapping. So many memories. Yeah, I feel like my gray hairs came about 10 years late. It was a stressful period of time. It was a wonderful book, as you can tell, Daily Stoic. Stoicism is about, I view it as having objectivity of your life so that at every moment you can know what your priority is. That's all. Doesn't mean you're not emotional. Doesn't mean you don't give a shit. It's not saying that. It's basically saying, hey, all this stuff is going on and life is hard and chaotic sometimes, but you know what your priorities are. Every day, it is daily, so you can read it every single day. There's an entry for, what's today, October 2nd? We'll pull it out right now. We'll do it live. Entry for October 2nd. And I get my fingers to work here. This is this is good paper. Most valuable asset. But the wise person can lose nothing. Such a person has everything stored up for themselves, leaving nothing to fortune. Their own goods are held firm, bound in virtue, which requires nothing from chance, and therefore can't be either increased or diminished. That's from Seneca on the firmness of the wise 5.4. I could just keep spitting. But right here, in fact, I'll go and take a moment because it's very short. It's a brief explanation of that quote or that passage, as they call it, coming from Holiday and Hanselman. Some people put their money in assets, stocks, bonds, property. Others invest in relationships or accomplishments, knowing that they can draw on these things just as easily as others can draw funds from a bank account. But a third type, Seneca says, invests in themselves and being a good and wise person. Which of these assets is most immune to market fluctuations and disasters? And it goes on from there. I'll spare y'all the rest. And that's for October 2nd, today. And so I have regular meditations that I do, nothing deep or elaborate, but just a few minutes every morning. This is a great companion to that. In fact, I think reading it in itself could be a form of meditation and being present for that. The thing is that we get so tied up, myself included, in the title, in the idea, in the future that frankly may never happen. It's more exciting when someone's pregnant than when someone actually has a baby out, because the future, as they say, being pregnant with possibilities, allows our imagination to go wild. But then we have to bring things down to earth and say, well, this is actually life. There's a daily operation to it. The best way to do it, I found, is to ground yourself in the present. Because if you have, and we'll get into having long-term goals later on in the episode, later on the live episode. If you're watching the clips, you'll find it in the next series of clips here. But if you're watching live episode, we'll go ahead and get into it a little bit later. If you have this long range goal, that means that you're going to be grinding it out, and your daily day is going to have a certain energy to it. But if you can't stand your daily day, your daily operation, it's going to be really hard for you. Again, I'm a parent. My kids are with me all of the time, all the time, on top of me all the time. I would not have it any other way, but it also takes a lot of energy. But to be a parent, that's at least 18 years. And you got to know that from the outset, but you can't focus on the 18 years. You have to focus on making sure they get up on time for school, make sure that they're fed, make sure they're being kind and thoughtful citizens. All those things are daily operations, hourly operations, minute operations, seconds in some cases. If you're parents or if you're helping the rearing of a child, you know the deal. It's second by second. That's the way life is. And so if you're in a situation where you're procrastinating and don't even want to do the second by second, again, NGMI, it's not going to make it. And so you might need to change your strategy or change your goals so it actually works out in a better way. Hey, I appreciate the shout out from Amazon. Unfortunately, I can't share it on screen here, but I appreciate you. I am doing well. I hope you're doing wonderful over here too, over at Amazon Land. A good companion to this argument is Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and J. Cole, three of considered the greatest rappers of this current generation that's up. Creative power strategy. The basic argument is say, listen, there are three ways that you can actually approach how you get success. These three are exemplar of it. The three can't be more different. I break down a strategy that's within 10 minutes. Over on Amazon, someone asking, how do you deal with an L or a loss when it comes to a relationship? And I'll go and plug that in here as well. I can spell today. And I'll throw your question in there. Thank you for the question. I don't see your name in there, but I appreciate the question. How do you deal with a loss when it comes to a relationship? Really tough. I've definitely taken my L's for sure. I've loved, I've lost. Again, you see the gray hairs. So I've been around for a little bit. And if you've loved, and been around for a little bit, you've also lost too. I think the number one thing from my perspective, I'm not a relationship coach, just be clear. I do the business coaching, but what I personal journey, I think the biggest thing that has helped me when I've taken an L when it's come to a relationship is actually I'd say two things. The first thing is actually having the experience. And I don't know if you've been on like the dating scene or been single for a period of time. It can be difficult to find someone you actually just get along with, that you're using the same language. I don't mean English, but I mean using the same language when as far as how you communicate, um, being able to have that chemistry, whether it's physical or otherwise, being able to get along for a period of time. And I always viewed relationships, whether it's romantic or platonic, and people are good friends or whatever, almost like we're marbles being tossed out, and at a certain point you knock into another marble, and you might be going at the same pace at the same time or a similar pace. And then you two or that group has a shared experience, but it does drift away. To paraphrase Seth Godin, one of my mentors, I adore him. Um, he says that all business partnerships, but I would argue that all relationships as well, it's comes from how can I put it? It's almost like all relationships are going to end. Not to be too morbid about it, they're going to end because one or both of them want to go different directions, or one of them passes away. Now that could be said, and Godin was talking about that in regards to relationships, or to business relationships. But that also applies to all other relationships if you think about it. Even if you're married, like you're not going to be married forever unless you're some type of demigod. It's not going to be forever. It's going to be for a set period of time. Which, in that sense, which leads to number two, is that then you become grateful for that connection at all. Like all the circumstances that are required for you to have a best friend, for you to have a chosen family, for you to fall in love, and for the person to fall in love with you too, for you to have a child, the amount of circumstances required to do that are insane. And so to get into your question, and to answer your question, I think it comes to having reverence and respect for the relationship happening at all. And if you are single now, then to reflect on what you can do to make yourself a better person so that you actually aren't required to be in a relationship to be happy. I know for the long periods of time that I was single between, I've had a few serious, very serious relationships long term. Again, I got kids right now. Um, but that those periods in between, I actually developed myself. It's kind of like being on the job market and not having a job yet. So you go to LinkedIn and you take some free classes. A lot of the classes are free. Trying to put you on game here. They have some free classes over at LinkedIn. Really good classes. Again, some of them are my mentors that are doing those classes. So really good classes. You're sharpening up on your stuff. You're learning how to become a better cook so that, whenever you do go on a date, then you can cook for your date, and their family or whatever. So there's ways that you can improve yourself as well. And the last thing I think is just understanding that relationship with yourself. As I shared with someone recently, like I really love myself. And I talk to myself all the time. I respect myself. I'm one of those people that can be by myself. Love being in relationships, but I'm one of those people that can be by myself, literally, like, just being on my own and having my quiet time. And if you're able to invest in that, to build into that, then I think that makes it a lot easier to have those periods of time where you're not in relationship, number one. And also, if things don't work out, then the L that you're taking is a little bit softer because you always got yourself. And person in the Amazon comments, you got yourself. You sound like that you're doing all right. Build yourself up. And when you do have the opportunity to be in a relationship, you'll be ready. So, good question. Big food for thought. Again, my name is Damon Brown. I am not a relationship coach, but I am an entrepreneurship coach. So that's more my bag. But obviously, I can opine on both a little bit. I'm here to help you as a side hustler, a solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. You're watching Bring Your Worth TV or listening, if you listen to the podcast, every Wednesday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You can subscribe for free. So, is there something you guys are doing or not doing where you're procrastinating and you're realizing this isn't the thing, that you're kind of stuck? Give a shout in the comments. Let me know. I love to hear and maybe there's some insight that me or the other folks in the community can give to you. I appreciate all y'all listening. Another big thing, when you're not going to make it, when it's time to just take that L, is when you are not growing. This is a huge one. This is so big because if you're not growing, then you're standing still. Or in a scientific way, when we don't grow, that represents death. Literally, we're always changing. Our hair is growing. Our you know, as we get older, we start to shrink a little bit because our bones shrink. Um, our body weight changes. Our cells are moving all the time. If you think about it from a scientific standpoint, not moving is as entropy. It's death. It's things just stop when we're overly committed. And I talk about this in my in today's newsletter. The link is right below at joindamon.me. When we are just focused on one particular outcome in one particular way, that narrows our field of vision. And when our field of vision is too narrow, then we don't realize all the other parts of us, all the other ways that we can express ourselves that are not being fed. You're either investing into becoming a better self. Talked about that earlier in the episode with the Daily Stoic. We're either investing into becoming a better self, or we're stalling. We're BSing, trying to keep it PG. We're BSing. We're either investing or we're BSing. That's probably the quote of the day for this episode. We're either investing or we're BSing. What that means is that when I was in grad school, I went to Northwestern, shout out to Chicago and Evanston. The money I put in, the time put in, put a lot of energy into it. And I was still quite young. So it was a really big commitment for, me being in my early 20s. And that investment, money wise and otherwise, ended up being the foundation of what I'm doing now. And maybe without Northwestern, I wouldn't be talking to you guys right now. And I wouldn't have the community that you guys have built with me. That's an investment. So the year I spent, it's a year-long program. So the year I spent in grad school, it wasn't wasted time because it was an investment. Now, if I was in grad school for plumbing, nothing wrong with plumbers. But if I was in the equivalent of grad school or advanced level trade school for plumbers, I like water. I was born in Atlantic City. Water's cool. I like eating seafood. Do I like toilets and sewage and pipes? Unless it's Mario Brothers, no, not my thing. I know plumbers. They're great. It's not my thing. That would be stalling. Now, sometimes we stall or we're BSing because of outward concerns. My family expects this of me, or I like this title, and this is my identity. I dealt with this a lot when I sold my last startup, Cuddler, because I identified myself as the co-founder of a very successful startup. I remember I was writing for Inc. magazine. You can still catch my Inc. magazine column at inc.com or at the some of the links below at bringyourworth.tv. And I remember getting my column over there several years ago, and I turned in my bio and I said, okay, yeah, I just sold my startup. So it said, Dane Brown is former co-founder of the startup Cuddler, which connected people for hugs. It was just acquired, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember my editor at the time, shout out to him, said, well, I'm going to go ahead and change this because you're still a co-founder. And I was like, no, actually, I don't think you understand. I sold the company. It got acquired. And he's like, yeah, but once a co-founder, always a co-founder. And I was like, oh, you're right. But there's this identity crisis that sometimes happens where when we're letting something go, we feel like that a part of us is going away with it. And my business coach, I call that our toolbox. You can get fired from a million teen jobs. You can have your heart broken 20 million times. I don't wish that on you, but it does happen. You could be going through all kinds of stuff. You could, be a parent that loses a child, and sympathy and empathy for, whatever you might be going through. but you're still a parent. You still would have been loved and had been a lover. You still had, if you got fired from all those jobs, these skills. They didn't take those skills from you. As I say in my book, Career Remix, the job is theirs, but the career is ours. You take that shit with you. See, there's my mouth again. Something about today. I swear there's nothing but tonic water in this. But you take that with you. It's the same thing. Same thing. Just like the person I was talking in the Amazon comments about relationships and taking L in relationships. It's like, yeah, but you learn from it, and also you were in a relationship. I know some folks that have never been in a relationship, at least a serious one. I know some folks that have never been in love. That in itself, again, like having a child or whatever, the roll of the dice, the amount of circumstances, the Google, and I don't mean the company, the Google of circumstances that need to overlap for you to even have that opportunity. That in itself creates gratitude once you understand it. If you're in a situation where you don't want to be there anymore, but you're not leaving, you must be getting something out of it. There's people way wiser than me that have done that have entire careers talking about that. But when we're in situations where the door is right there and we don't go, we're getting something out of it. I'm not talking about abusive situations. I'm not talking about, situations where we don't have the financial resources. I'm not talking about that. My family's from the hood, so it's like I understand. Like sometimes you can't move, but if you have the resources and the wherewithal, you can literally change the circumstances. But you don't. You got to ask yourself why. And you're either growing and you're investing or you're BSing. At a certain point, it comes all down to that. And thank you for the agreement in the comments. Even though I can't share them online, but I appreciate your feedback. One of my favorite books, in fact, probably my favorite book on quitting. It's by my guy who I already mentioned, Seth Godin, The Dip. It is a short book. I think, oh my God, but this episode is about an hour long. I think the dip is shorter than this episode. I just realized that we're about to hit 58 minutes, which is crazy. I love chilling out with y'all. And it's a really important topic, and I appreciate y'all feeling it, especially in the comments. Listen, the dip is like 45 minutes long. The book is super, super tiny if you're going to get the physical book. I have the audiobook myself. To put it plainly, either we're in a situation, I'm just paraphrasing what Seth said. We're in a situation where we're going through a difficult time, a dip, and that's just part of the ritual as far as us getting good at something, as far as us working with something, or it ends up being a thing where, oh my gosh, I think one of my live streams ended because I was cursing too much. Sorry, I lost y'all. Hopefully, I'll try to get on later. But the the certain dip where that's just kind of the rigor or the difficulty of what's going on with what's happening. Like, again, me being in grad school, that was hard. That doesn't mean it was a waste of time. It just meant it was hard. I had to grow. That's different than being in a cul-de-sac. Cul-de-sac, it's French, but it's more of a American term, and it basically means a suburban, usually in the suburbs area where you get to a street and there's a little circle, and it's a dead end. And people will have houses there, and if you have kids, it's a place where they can bike safely. I had a couple cul-de-sacs, when I was growing up in some of the suburbs in America on the East Coast and in the Midwest. But a cul-de-sac, you just go round and around in a circle. You're not dipping, you're not doing anything like that. So that's what makes it so difficult. And so you have to know the difference between the dip, you're going through a hard time, but it's worth it, and a cul-de-sac where you're going in circles. A great companion to this is when should I quit something? I talk about, excuse me, I talk about some leaders of our time, a lot of people that are in the creative field, not leaders like presidents, but people in the creative field, and when to get off stage. And it's an important one. Be sure and check it out. It's actually one of my favorite little episodes from back in the day. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown. I'm here to help you as a side hustler, solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. You're watching Bring Your Worth TV every Wednesday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You can subscribe for free. So, have you guys been in a situation where you were you thought you were growing, but you were actually and you thought you were investing, but you were actually were BSing? Or were you in a situation where you thought you were messing around and come to find out ended up being a really good move for you? I'd love to hear it in the comments. Let us know what's happening. All right. And my personal favorite one, you're not going to make it. You need to take that L when you don't see yourself doing that thing in 5 years. Now, it might be 1 year, it might be 3 years. I tend to work in 5 year horizons. It's just the way my brain works. This is something that I always ask my coaching clients. If you've coached with me, you've probably heard me ask this question. Whatever you're doing right now, however you have your life set up, earlier in the episode, I was talking about daily operations. However you have your life structure right now, is it sustainable for the next 3 to 5 years? Often the answer is no. This also applies to whatever our goal is, whatever we're investing in, whatever we're moving forward towards. If we're putting all this energy into it, it's the month of October right now as of this recording. So if we're just focused on the month of October and it's like, well, this is how I'm going to break things down in October and I'm going to go so hard and I'm going to have this every day. Da, 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 da. What does November look like? Are you burnt out on the couch eating ice cream in December? Nothing wrong with being on the couch or eating ice cream. I like doing both. But if that's not what you're supposed to be doing, you're supposed to be in the gym. And I mean the gym as an analogy for everything. You're supposed to be in the arena. Well, whatever system you have right now, by December, you might be burning yourself out. So then the question is, why are you in such a rush? If this is something that you want to invest in, if this is something that you want to have a larger impact on the world with, if this is something that you say, this is what I want to do with my life. And a lot of people that I coach, that's the language that they use. Therefore, that's the language that I use. Then, you know, again, I'm middle aged. Um, a lot of people that I coach are a lot younger than me, so they might be in their 20s and 30s. There's some people that I coach that are in their 50s. But particularly for if you're watching and you're younger, let's say you're 25. I remember 25. That's when I first started getting into books. And let's say you're 25 and you're already feeling burnout, homeboy or homegirl. Retirement age here in America is 65 and on the rise. So if what you're doing is burning you out and you're 25, how the heck are you going to go into another 40 years? How's that going to work? How are you going to have a sustainable career? If I didn't have that line of thinking, you wouldn't be talking to me right now. Yeah, I graduated grad school. I think I was 22, 22 going on 23. I wouldn't have made it if I didn't have the mentality of thinking long term. So it's a balance, as I talked about earlier in the show. It's a balance of long term vision as far as where do you see yourself in 5 years, and is this the direction to go? And short term, coming all the way back, macro to micro, and saying, oh, well, let me go ahead and set this up so that I'm in a better place. And that the daily operation I have actually sustains me in a way that makes perfect sense. If you're going to go deeper into this idea, the infinite game is a great place to start. Shout out to Simon Sinek. He talks about there being finite games and infinite games. It's actually based on another book and called Finite and Infinite Games, I believe it's called. And I forget the name of the author, forgive me, but you'll feel free to look it up online. You'll find out. And of course, he cites it and gives respect to the original author heavily. Simon puts his own spin on it. The basic idea is that there are finite games like football. I don't mean, well, also either football for the blokes as well as for the Americans. Either football works where there's a certain amount of quarters or sections to the game. There's a winner and a loser, and then everybody goes home. and they claim victory for that moment until, of course, the next matchup. Those are finite games. Those are relatively easy. We know the winner, we know the loser. There's very few games that are set up like that that don't have a definitive winner and loser. An infinite game is being married. An infinite game is being a parent or being a child, you know, um, offspring, whatever. And I don't mean the group, but offspring, you know, and you have parental guidance. An infinite game is running a company that you plan on passing on to your kids. It ain't going anywhere. And so you can win, quote unquote, a battle or a fight with your spouse. You can get one over on your kids or on your mom or your dad or whomever your guardians. And you can make a quarterly profit by screwing people over with the business that you're running. People do it all the time. People make choices. I don't have to name names. You know who they are. It's like, no, I have to win this battle. I'm gonna be, we call it petty. I'm gonna be that petty. I gotta win this thing. And they don't think about, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to sleep with this person at night. And I don't mean in a good way. It's like, oh, I have to sleep in the same bed. We got the same household. Okay. Well, I guess I bet you have to talk to them again. Oh, you know what? One day I'm gonna be old, and the next generation, including my kids, are gonna be taking care of me. Oh, me being a child, I can go ahead and do all this stuff, but eventually I need to get fed by my parents or by my guardians. And I'm going to want something from them because I don't have my own money or resources. Eventually, there's going to be another quarter. And the board of directors is going to be like, well, Damon, you had a killer last quarter, but now your customers don't trust you. So, how are you going to make it this quarter? Hmm, that's the infinite game. Book talks about that. And then I have a video talking about it. How to win long-term Simon Sinek strategy, breaking down what he's talking about, why it matters, and give some examples for the book. I recommend watching the video and then grabbing the book. It's a really fun book. I do a lot of walking, particularly when it's not 105 degrees, as it is now here in Las Vegas. It's like it did not get the memo that it was fall, aside from the allergies here in Las Vegas. Um, but when it's cool enough, I do a lot of walking. I remember listening to the audiobook and walking all around my beautiful neighborhood, and it was a great listen. And Simon's actually the one that does the audio, and I love his voice. I met him in person at TED a while ago. Awesome guy, but he also has a great, great, beautiful voice, and he killed the audiobook. So shout out to him. But I think that this last strategy, I think, will give you the best insight as far as making long-term plans. So from the top, you want to find out if something's taking more energy than it's giving back. That's a good reason to take that out. You're procrastinating doing the very thing that you said you really cared about. You're not growing, or as I said, you're not investing, but you're BSing. You're just biding time. And you don't see yourself doing this in 5 years. Those are reasons to take that out and let it go. I've had a couple L's this year. I'll probably have more. I might even have some today. That's part of the game. As I said at the top of the show, if you're not taking risks and you're not, let me rephrase that. If you're not getting L's or taking L's, then you're missing something. And there's something that's being lost in the sauce, as my good friend used to say. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown, here to help you as a side hustler, solopreneur, or otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. It's a Bring Your Worth show, Bring Your Worth TV. Thank you for joining me. This is a longer than usual episode. Thank you for the commentary, by the way. I love talking about relationships and all that stuff, even though I'm not a relationship coach, just to be clear, not at all. But, I appreciate the conversations that happen and the comments. I live for those. You subscribe to Bring Your Worth for free. And I'll see you guys in about a week. Until next time, remember you can bring your worth. You can always build from now. Take care of yourselves and others.